Howdy Pitmasters, in this video I'm going to show you guys how to cook pork ribs in an offset smoker. Let's get to it. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is remove any hanging meat tags. You want to make these ribs look really uniform, and it also gives them a more even cook. Then you want to grab a sharp knife in here and create an incision to be able to rip this membrane off. Now if you do this correctly, you should be able to rip it off all in one big rip. Now this membrane, or silver skin as it's known, doesn't render down in the cook and gives you poor results. So make sure you always remove the membrane from your racks of ribs. Then you want to rub your ribs up. I'm just using a homemade sweet and spicy pork rub that I've made. And I'm going to make sure I apply it really liberally across both racks of ribs here. Then I'm going to pat it down to dry it in. Then I'm going to flip my ribs over and do the exact same thing. A nice even coat, pat dry them in. These ribs will now be ready to get onto the smoker. So now it's time to get our smoker fired up. So we've got a chimney full of hot charcoal briquettes that we're going to pour straight into the charcoal basket in our firebox here. And then we're going to let those coals get nice and hot, and then we're going to get our preheated iron bark wood log split on. So let's get this split on here, directly on top of these hot coals. Then we're going to crack open this side fire door a little bit here just to allow some oxygen flow into that fire. And within 30 seconds, there we go, our log's quarter lit. And now we're ready to get our ribs on the smoker. So for this rib cook, we're aiming for around a smoker temperature of 275 Fahrenheit, which is where we're sitting quite nicely and rolling that very nice thin blue smoke that we're after. So we're going to get these ribs placed here nicely in the middle, and then we're going to get this iron bark split that was preheating in the smoker and sit it on top of that firebox so that we can use it to replenish our fire when we need to. So we're just checking on our fire, and as you can see, the log's got plenty of life in it, and we've got a nice clean burn that we can see through the door here. So because we want to be trying to spritz our ribs to keep them moist, stop them from drying out, allow that smoke to penetrate, because smoke attracts to moisture, so we're doing that every hour. Now you can use apple juice, apple cider vinegar, beer, a combination of both, whatever. I usually use apple juice, but I didn't have any, so for this video I'm using water, and we're going to give it a quick spritz. And just a nice even coat spray across both racks of ribs will do enough to allow them to keep moist, stop them from drying out, and it's just going to give you a much better result. So do that every 45 minutes to an hour up until the point where we wrap these ribs at around the 3-4 hour mark. So I've come to check our fire, and you can see that log's pretty much dead, so it's time to get our next preheated log straight onto the coals, and within 30 seconds, lift off. And it's been around another 45 to 50 minutes, so time for another quick spritz. Just a nice even coat spray across both racks of ribs, just like that, and then we'll let these things cook a little longer. So we're about 3 hours into this cook, and these ribs are looking really good. But now to speed up this cook and add some extra flavour in there and allow that heat to really bump up, we're going to wrap these things. And what we're going to do, we're going to wrap them with, we're going to use some brown sugar, we're going to use some maple syrup. Sometimes I use apple juice, but today we're going to go the maple syrup. And we're going to wrap them in there nice and tightly, bow them up, seal them in that tin foil, and get them back on the pit for another hour and a half wrapped in that foil. Okay, so what we're going to do is pour a pretty generous amount of brown sugar on here. Just like that. Nice spread in there. Looking good. Then we're going to pour a whole heap of maple syrup around on top of the ribs and around the outside. That way when we wrap these ribs up, we've created a nice boat full of brown sugar and maple syrup that's going to caramelize and soften. And it's going to steam up and evaporate into the meat, and we're just going to get this really nice, juicy, flavorful result. So back onto the pit for another hour. So now that we've wrapped them up, we'll just quickly check that they're nice and tight, and we'll let these go in the pit another hour. We'll be back soon to check them. Alright, so after being wrapped for about an hour, these things are ready to get sauced up for the next 15 to 20 minutes of their cook. So rather than unwrap them completely, we're going to roll the tin foil around the outside like this to boat it. That way all those juices and caramelization from the brown sugar and apple juice we've created stay afloat and just keep the meat nice and tender and moist and keep soaking up that flavour. Now, you can use whatever barbecue sauce you like. I've got a hickory honey sweet bourbon one here, just one that I like, and I'm going to rub it on pretty liberally. Now, of course, you want to use like a brush mop or something a little more useful than this, but this little spatula tool is all I have. So anyway, gonna rub up both the ribs real nicely, then get them back on the smoker. So we're going to get these things back on for another 15-20 minutes and allow that sauce to harden and become nice and chewy and caramelized. Not burnt, but just nice and soft and chewy. Let's come back and check them in 15-20 minutes. Now, because we're so close to being done, and we've had that sauce on for about 10 minutes, you'll see a nice mahogany colour as that sauce starts to caramelise onto those ribs, meaning they're almost ready to take off, rest, and cut, and eat. Let's have a look how they're looking. Mahogany colour we're talking about. Reckon another 5 minutes or so, then we're ready to take these things off. Alrighty, look at this. These bad boys are done. They've rested for about 5 minutes. Now we'll slice them up and give them a taste. Look at that. Woo. That looks amazing. Let's try it out. Oh my god. That sweet and spicy rub. That blended in with the maple syrup and the brown sugar during the wrap. And then that beautiful sweet hickory sauce at the end. You cannot go wrong. That was a perfect result. There you have it. That's how you do ribs on an offset smoker. Cheers.